For my deep dive on the Sound of Freedom movie, we are talking about Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad and some of the issues. For more context, please see parts 1 through 3. So Tim Ballard's origin story and the stories of a lot of the different raids and jumps of Operation Underground Railroad are questionable and misleading at best. Tim Ballard claims that after working for the CIA and then transitioning and working for HSI, doing a lot of trafficking work, that he became frustrated by not being able to do certain things to save certain children if they didn't have ties to the US. And in most of his origin stories, he says that he had this big revelation and felt called by God to save the children. So he left government work to develop this organization called Operation Underground Railroad. The investigative journalists at Vice News were able to verify that he did work for the CIA for maybe a year, most likely in an intern position, and that he did work for HSI doing some type of trafficking, but they cannot get any details about that because it has to be agreed upon by the person who was doing the work for these government organizations. And Tim Ballard has refused to answer questions or clear up any confusion about his career and his history in government work. Doesn't necessarily mean it's entirely untrue. We do know that he did some kind of work in human trafficking. It just means that a lot of his claims cannot be verified, although he could easily verify them himself and clear them up if he wanted to. Something that can be verified, though, is certain operations that Tim Ballard and OUR claim to have done, where Tim Ballard tells very dramatic stories to different people at different events in order to raise funds for OUR, and they are usually highly exaggerated and dramatized in order to get a certain reaction. You can watch the YouTube videos that Lynn Packard did that I referenced in part 3, or read some of Vice News articles to learn more about the specifics of how misleading some of these stories are. One example is a story that Tim Ballard liked to tell to Donald Trump a lot, and Trump kind of echoed this, was about a girl that OUR claimed to have rescued and said if there was a border wall that the girl would not have been able to be taken over the border into Mexico. They told the story as if the girl was much younger than she actually was, and this girl actually rescued herself. She wasn't rescued by any entity, no government, and not OUR. She left her situation herself to go get help. When Tim Ballard tells these stories at different events, he gets very emotional and often cries, and it made me think a lot about Carl Lentz and Hillsong and how people used to say that Carl learned to cry on demand to evoke certain emotions from people at certain opportune times. The stories they tell are very strategic with the end goal of making money for these jumps or raids. We're going to talk about the problems with those in the next part.